Hello, my name is Ben Cabot, host of this talk show, My Father's Advice. Today's date is October 16th, 2025. This is a show of community interest, engineered and recorded by the soundboard experience of Freddie Montalvo, broadcasting from the Binghamton University of New York at WHRW 90.5 FM. The information you're about to listen to will be morally uplifting, educational, community-spirited, and worthy of modeling your life after, so please gather your family around the radio and take notes. Today's guest in the studio is an improvisational artist, so tell us your name, who you are, what you do, and maybe when you started.
My name is Aldo Borromei, and my evolution goes from music, and I'm a crossover into art. So let me tell you a little bit about the musical part, because that's going to be imperative to understand what I'm going to be talking about. My musical evolution, and when I crossed over into visual art in general, because I found a relationship between non-objective art and spontaneous creativity, and that's what I hope to impart. So, in a sense, this is my story. As a very young, I was preteen. I might have been 9 years old. One of my neighbors had been with big bands. He was a trumpet player, and I never heard a trumpet. And the moment that I heard this in my backyard, he had come home from being on the road, and I heard him practicing, and I was so taken by this sound that I became not only fascinated, but it ended up being obsessed, because I ended up in the music business, and I had studied in New York with some really good teachers. And what happened while I was in New York, I was introduced to other people who were working with big bands, the tail end of the big band business. So I did that for maybe 3 or 4 years. And when I was on the road, I was reading on the road as an old beatnik.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. As a matter of fact, when I was growing up, my father was an opera fan, and because of the experience that I had, I was studying everywhere I could study. And as a 15-year-old, I couldn't even drive, but I was part of the a local opera company here, and I was working with the opera orchestra, and I had to be driven to rehearsals because I couldn't drive. So there I am, a kid in the pit playing orchestral music, and my father and mother are in the audience, all aglow. And little did they know that the more I studied and the more I spent time in New York City, that I would be drawn into the music business per se. Road bands are great for young and indestructible people, which I was at that time. So while I was doing that, I hadn't been quite interested in jazz at that point. But when I started to listen to music, especially Miles Davis and the recordings he did with Gil Evans, it was so beautiful, and it captured me again in the same way as when I was a kid, and it turned me around. So I needed to play jazz. I needed to find out what all that is about, and I did. Improvisation is I call it spontaneous creativity. It's something that you do. It's the kind of thing that you learn by doing. It's experiential in that sense. All jazz players learn by playing. So what is it about experiential learning that I came to realize through improvising? And that was something that I became conscious of as a form of abstracting. Now, the reason I bring up the word abstract is not to scare anybody, because everybody runs away from the word, and we think if it's abstract, it's not conceptual. Abstract things can't be smelled, they can't be touched, they can't be heard, they can't be all of these things. And yet, concepts is like it's the concrete of understanding concrete things. So we live in our society through something called an abstract concept. So that seems to be an oxymoron. But liberty, justice, peace, love, religion, you name it. These are all abstract concepts. So the capacity to abstract is an innate capacity in the human being. It's been going on for so long that we don't even realize it. It's become more subliminal. And if you look up the word subliminal, it will tell you in a dictionary the word subliminal means that it's below the level of awareness. Okay? So, what I'm going to talk about is becoming conscious of your capacity to abstract. This comes straight from the discipline of general semantics, of which I am a member still, and I studied independently in New York because I was fascinated with it. And through that time, I was introduced to neurolinguistic programming, which had to do with how we make meaning of language. And this abstracting is a meaning-making capacity. What makes it personal is that we are all individuals. So how we abstract is contemporary to us. And whenever we're doing it outside of our consciousness, we don't realize that we might be splitting with words what are not split in nature. And I'll take that as the split between mind and body. So mind and body is a split that you can't find that split in nature. All of nature has a degree of consciousness that makes it live. The living of anything, plants, they're all abstracting some DNA message that they've gotten. They know what to do.
Right. It's amazing that trees know to change their color at a certain time.
Okay.
It's the same tree DNA.
Okay, let's call it that because that's not a bad reference. What I've put together is that experience and expression happen in the human organism spontaneously. The music part of this that I realized is that you can't get in the way of music. Once it hits you as an organism, when you hear it, that is what it is. It's an experience that the organism expresses. That's why we love to listen to music. Now, with jazz, it has not never, but it has a minimal degree of being conceptualized by jazz lovers. Now, in today's day in the world all over, hip hop is what's being conceptualized. But that also is both an expression and an experience. So what do I call my art? My art is an expression and experience that happens spontaneously when I'm making a painting. So what does that mean for the viewer? That's where I'm in a different position than most artists. All artists want people to feel what they've painted, to feel when they look at their sculpture, to feel if you're watching dance. When you go to a symphony, you feel it. There's no way of getting around it. If you don't feel it, you shouldn't even be there. Okay, so it's the immediacy of music that turned me on to the idea that even experiential learning is something that can be called immediate once you express it. And there are protocols to help somebody make meaning out of non-objective art. Abstract art is one thing. Non-objective art is abstract to the nth degree. You can't make any meaning of it as anything because it has its own potential for you to make meaning of it. So when I had my shows, when I returned to the area, I had two shows. Or no, I had many shows, but the first show was two series of my art. One was called Counterpoint. Obviously, that comes from a musical background. And the next one was called The Blues. And all I did was change my counterpoint by rubbing white paint over areas that I had shadowed slightly with pencil. So that white paint turned into a creative kind of blue that you'll never see anywhere else. But that was a spontaneous moment that I had with my own art. So
It's art is like life. It's trial and error.
it's trial and error, and when you experience something, then your whole view of how you make art changes. So I learn from every series. I learn something new. The so here's where I want to continue because this is important. Someone interviewed me from at the Binghamton Holiday Inn where I had these shows, and they asked me why I had no titles on my art, and I says that the title is all untitled, because I wanted them to ask that very question. Why do you do that? Well, I do that because you're forced to make meaning out of something that is totally abstract and totally non-objective. The only thing you have to work with as a viewer is to concentrate on various things. There's the color and how colors help you move from a focal point to a vanishing point, back to a focal point to a vanishing point. So movement is a part of this type of non-objective art. But that movement includes the feelings that can be evoked just from the color and just with the way one looks at it. Now, I have a YouTube channel called Beholding Art as Personal Development. And the reason I chose those titles, that particular title, is because I think that when person becomes conscious of their capacity to abstract, it's not only for the art that they can make meaning of. This is not exactly art appreciation. As a matter of fact, appreciation of art is not in my vocabulary. In my vocabulary, there's the connection between the art and the person in the moment. All of the art you view is in the moment. You are contemporary to the art. So this experience, this expression, is a spontaneous co-creativity that happens. And if you get into the literature of science, what do they call it? Cognitive science, they talk about intersubjectivity. That intersubjectivity is you and the art in that moment. Something is going on that is not quite you and not quite the art that you're observing. What is happening is an opening for you to feel feelings that will be evoked. You just have to give it a second. So if you're looking away from art, or you're saying, I hate that, or if you happen to be blessed with a gigantic experience and you come away from saying, I never knew non-objective abstract art could give me this feeling, then you can make the connection. Here's how I explain the connection that goes on. When you're observing this art as a beholder, it's right in the word behold. You hold it in your consciousness for a moment. That moment is what the experience between you and the art is. You let it in and you surrender to it. You give it a moment, and over time, if you have a painting, you will grow with it. It'll continue to tell you things because the organism, you, and I call it the organism because when you are experiencing that art, the organism is expressing that. So your expression that you've been calling your experience, or your experience that you've been calling expression, is like a kernel of educational truth that is based on this capacity that we have to abstract. So what do you do when you're making meaning? And all artists want you to make meaning. Your personal meaning making is your capacity to abstract what you're looking at. So this word is abstract. It is a capacity that you have. So in my YouTube channel, I have various protocols on how to look at art and how to get the abstracting capacity so that you recognize it and that you can move into it. Now, the beautiful...
This is for people that do art, as opposed to people that go to a museum and see abstract art and appreciate it. Right?
Abstract art in a museum is imprisoned there. You can't have that art over time long enough to give you the meaning that I'm talking about.
Right. It's just a
In other
glance.
words, the meaning that you give to the art is being given to you as you observe the art.
It's for the doer of the art you're talking, right?
It's the experiencing person who
Right.
is experiencing their emotion about the art simultaneously. Now, this is a new idea. And I always quote Gregory Bateson, who some people know was the regent of the entire educational system in California for years. He wrote a book called Steps to an Ecology of Mind, where he defines an idea. So have you ever asked yourself or asked anybody, what is an idea?
I don't recall ever asking that.
Okay, so his answer is an idea is, quote, news of a difference. So I'm bringing you the news of the difference that as I understand it. This is a different way. It's a personal way to view art and to abstract, to learn to abstract. Once one has captured this sensation that happens, when you look at, you probably have seen art that is optical illusion.
Right, the magic eyes maybe, or
Whatever it is, there's
Yeah.
usually a vase and two faces. When you look at it, you can either see the vase or you can see the two faces. So when you move from one to another, that's called, in psychological terms, it's called a gestalt. So it's like you've extracted, which is what the word abstract really is meant to mean. You take a little bit out of the whole thing. So if you see the vase, you're abstracting the vase. You're making meaning of that vase. The faces disappear. And you could feel that. That's a feeling. And that feeling can be called a conclusion. Once you have the illusion and you see one or the other, each one is a conclusion. Each one has been abstracted to get that conclusion, to go from an abstract experience and to make part of it concrete is what you've done.
so that's where the idea comes from.
And that's where the idea comes from. If you get this idea, now here's the best part that's more difficult to explain, but unless I say it in this way, abstract means to take a small part out of a whole, examine it, and see how it's related to the whole. Now, the way it's related to the whole will tell you that all of that whole is something you don't know. All you know is the abstracting capacity, so it will lead you to abstracting the whole piece of art, bit by bit by bit. You can't know or explain or experience everything at the same time.
Right.
So this is true. So when we get that abstracting is beautiful for this reason, you can learn from one small part and know that everything else has been left out. So what about your life? What about the language that you use? What is left out? What did you get and what did you leave out? What was omitted by society and what, I say that.
It's the whole intercourse of communication between human beings. I quite often, my wife will say something and perhaps I don't understand it. I said, well, I never learned how to speak woman.
Well, there you go.
Because we think different, have different ideas, and
Well-
everybody's ideas are based on experience.
And expression.
Right.
I have
right,
to keep
exactly.
adding that because there's something about expression that what makes the connection between people. As I continue to talk to you and show you my interest in you, I'm expressing my interest to you. The person that I talk to a lot, I will like.
Exactly.
And the person who I allow to speak to me, because I know that this is an area of cognitive science, if I let you speak to me long enough, you'll grow to like me because you're experiencing yourself when you talk to me. So this is what I'm trying to impart about art that I learned from music, is that now I know that the sound of music, there is no separation between music as a territory and it hits me. I can't get in its way. It will affect me. With language, you can have wife talk. It doesn't quite get to the territory, which is your heart
Right.
or your being. So one needs to know what is the territory and what is the map. The separation between the territory and the map comes from general semantics. It's one of their dominant sayings or dictates. So they always say the map is not the territory. So be careful what you're saying. You're sharing a map with somebody. Now, if we're sharing a map and that map we're in agreement with, and it's not really the right map, we may be in a cult.
Could be.
Could be. So the idea of this is that art will teach anybody who becomes conscious of abstracting, that they're making evaluations based on what they think that language is doing to their nervous system. So in general semantics, they have higher order abstractions, like mother is a high order abstraction. Dirt is a very low order abstraction. Everybody knows what dirt is, right?
Right.
But mother is personal. All of these other abstract concepts that I talked about earlier, like peace and love and all of the things that we're abstracting and we don't really know we're doing it. Think about how you do that. Think about how you made meaning of liberty, your own liberty, the liberty that you want to behave freely. This particularly now in an era where free speech is out there in a big, big way. There are people who are talking about things that are propaganda. The current one right now is that there's going to be people are coming together on a No King's Day, right? Okay, we all know what that means. We've made meaning of it, especially if you're a liberal. You make meaning of No King's Day because it has a reflection on what the government is doing. I don't have to explain that.
Right.
However, if you're a Republican and you turn that into hate of America, that is propaganda. And propaganda is very intense because it hits the nervous system in two ways. You can feel it as a semantic reaction.
An insult, yeah.
Okay? Now, when you look at a church and you see all that magnificent glass there, I won't call that propaganda, but in a way, it's telling you this is the glory of God, of the church. Talk about a high order abstraction. Every ideology that you ever heard of has been a very high order of abstraction, and that has the deepest semantic reaction. So when you talk about a language that you can make this connection with, whether it's art, whether it's the words, especially words, general semantics is the way to go. Why haven't anybody heard about general semantics, or very few have? There was Hayakawa years ago, and he was at Columbia University or the University of Chicago, one of those. But he was a general semanticist, and if everybody goes, oh, it's the meaning of meaning. Well, in a way, it is the meaning of meaning, but it's also the kernel of learning for human beings. We've been doing it in deep time. We're connected with deep time just by virtue of being on the planet. You go way beyond your ancestors. Your ancestors had ancestors who had ancestors, and ad absurdum. So think about what humans have done. Why did it become sublime? Everybody was anxious to program folks to get a job, to be part of society, to have a faith. All of these are, now they talk about this as a meme.
Let me ask you something.
Sure.
I've been on your website and I looked at some of your art, and I was wondering, when you talk about in the creation of the art, you go through a abstract process. After your art is finished, and maybe you go back a year later and look at it, does it give you the same internal feeling as when you first created it?
It's not the same.
It's not the same, right?
And that's the point that I'm trying to make, why you can't go to a museum, or why when somebody buys a piece of abstract-looking thing in a big box store, well, that's nice, that it's decorative, and it's only decorative. Now, that doesn't have the potency to capture you for over a long period of time. If what I'm saying is true, and I think it is, you'll lose interest in that, and it'll be just hanging on the wall.
The best thrill you get is as you're doing the abstract art.
For me?
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. As I'm doing it, I don't make too many corrections. There's nothing to correct. I'm following all of the information about creating a solo as an instrumentalist. You
Right.
you build it. All creativity is like this, and I'm going to show you. It's like you start at a point and you expand that point until there's something in the middle that goes bang, and then decrease. Call and response, excitation to a level, and then relaxation. This is true of all art. So what I try to do in my art is have the person who's looking at it. You can look at my art. My art is, most of it is square. You can hang this in 8 different ways, in 8 different perspectives. So if you buy my art, you have 8 in 1. So
So people can take a look at your art. You have a Facebook page, and you have another place to see some of this abstract thing, so people could get a feel for what you're talking about.
yeah, and I've been doing some interviews with that. That's called Beholding Art as Personal Development. And I make a point that this is a form of individuation, and you get in touch with something you've been doing all your life. I'll be talking about it in my next interview, which happens on Saturday, and that'll be cast as well. And the the object of this is to know that you're abstracting all the time. It's the kernel of your personal education, and everybody individuates in their way. Wouldn't you like to know more about yourself and how you operate? You know about your car, right?
Right.
It's got all these parts, and they do this, that, and the other thing. What human minds do is abstract. And every language has got its abstractive potential. And with that potential, you can lie, you can omit, or you can tell what's called the truth.
Right.
Okay? So your truth, your sense of the meaning that you make, is a personal connection with that work of abstract or particularly non-objective art.
Right.
You're learning a technique about learning, and that's what experiential learning is. I call what I do, and my process is, I call it expressional education. It's like second generation, and that's what my paper was about when I went to school here at BU. I wrote a paper called Personal Development, Unknown Territory, in experiential education, and I called it expressional education. And I got most of that when I was in New York. Even after I had been in the music business, I went back to New York during the Human Potential Movement, and they had neurolinguistic programming that talked about touch and various aspects of eye movement and so on. So I have the stuff that I need to invent protocols that will help people to learn to abstract. And that's what I'm trying to get across. If they buy my art, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. But
Well, it's looking at it is the appreciation of what you do.
the problem with appreciation is that it has this aura of coming from the outside in. I'm going to teach you how to appreciate art. No, appreciation is not in not my vocabulary. Neither is the word only human, because only is a deprecating word for a human being. So I'm talking about the excitation that can be had. If someone says to you or says to me, "What do you mean by spiritual?" I say it's an amazement. I'm amazed at nature. I'm amazed at myself. Not only what I don't know, which I have to admit, but what I do know. And how do I work myself into the future? I'm a Homo sapien, but I'm also Homo prospectus. I need to have a way to think about getting into the future. Art will do that to one. Art will be a key to what you can put together, something you already know and you can bring to the fore and use it to learn or unlearn almost every subject you already know.
And typically, whatever art you create lives beyond your lifetime.
Hopefully.
Well, if it's on Facebook, it's there forever.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think we got a 2-minute warning yet.
Well, it went off and I just ignored it. But you have some kind of final guidance for us where people can see what you were talking about or your style of art interpretation?
Well, I just mentioned to you that there's a way of looking at everybody wants to find a focal point. And I should say this, that figurative art does not need to be abstracted because you know what it is. If you see a seashore and a moon over the ocean, you've already abstracted that millions of times in your own life, right? Anything that you've actually seen and you can identify, you don't have to abstract. It's figurative. It tells you what it is, right? When you look at something that you have never seen, the human organism, the excitation that goes into this visual process that we all have is something that's being studied through what I mentioned before.
Where can people see what you've done?
Well, my art is in two places. One is in Aldo Improvisational Art, and that'll take you to 8 different series that I've done. Or you can go there through that site. You can go to Beholding Art as Personal Development. That will tell you what my writing has been about. And if you want to check my art, if you want to use my art as your way of finding out what I'm talking about, you can. If you have a painting, you can do that. In other words, I needed the writing that I had been doing, which, by the way, is totally, my writing is also fairly abstract and compact. But if you get that, what we're driving at is the capacity to understand, to evaluate. And even evaluate is a word that is hard to define because we think we know what we're doing. But I ask you again, can you define what a value is?
Well, sometimes when I was starting out, every time we went on vacation as a family, we'd bring the art kit. And sometimes deciding what to draw, I would just place my hand on a blank sheet and wait until the blank sheet told me what it wanted on it, which sounds kind of crazy, but it's almost an improvisational process I use.
It is.
To try to decide whether God gave me the inspiration or whether the paper gave me inspiration or whether my patience gave me the inspiration. I was improvising, and it was something I had seen that I ended up putting on paper.
I had many false starts on paper.
Right. Well, Aldo, I appreciate having you here. You have a Facebook page under your name, right?
My name, yeah.
And
Aldo Borromei at gmail.com.
Okay.
That's it.
People have to look that up, or it'll be on my Facebook page. They can find out how to spell it.
Okay. And also Aldo Improvisational Art. That's the name of my my site. That's the site.
Right.
The channel is called, you can look in the channel under just my name, and it'll take you to the channel that says Beholding Art as Personal Development.
Is this a discussion or actually showing you doing art?
Well, like I say, when I talk about all this and somebody responds to me, because you can respond, I will take a phone call. I will talk to somebody who wants to know more about what I'm talking about. And what I can put on my next drop. The next drop is going to be a discussion between myself and the person who's been helping me through all this. His technology and his technique have been instrumental in getting my message across.
Well, that's pretty neat. I'll make sure in my Facebook page to identify all those sites where they can find your stuff.
That's pretty much it, those 2 sites.
Okay, well, Aldo, thank you very much for being here and talking about improvisational art. We're going to close out with Freddie Montalvo is going to send us home.
Let me tell you how much I appreciate your invitation.
Well,
I enjoyed every minute of it.
You know, art is a concept that I think anybody can do. But thank you for your inspiration.
Okay.